Shocking, Savior Chishimba slams foreign newspapers' rating of HH as national disgrace. A foreign newspaper releases a global ranking. And suddenly, Zambia is trending not for progress, but for embarrassment. Political commentator Savior Chishimba has come out strongly, calling the rating of President Hakainde Hichilema a national disgrace. But here's the real question. Was this an unfair foreign smear, or a brutal reflection of Zambia's current reality? Tonight, we separate emotion from evidence. Good day, viewers. Welcome to another edition of InspirAfrica Official. I'm Nakash. I hope you've all had a wonderful start to your week. As we approach the new year, the political temperature in Zambia continues to rise, and today, we bring you a story that has set social media ablaze and sparked fierce debate across the nation. Our lead story today, a foreign newspaper's controversial rating. A president's honor questioned. And a fiery defense that has divided a nation. Picture this: the morning sun rises over Lusaka. Citizens scroll through their phones over breakfast. And there it is, a headline from an international publication that sends shockwaves through the corridors of power. President Hakainde Hichilema, the man elected with overwhelming hope and promise just years ago, has been rated poorly by a foreign newspaper. But it's not just the rating that ignites the firestorm, it's the response. Enter Savior Chishimba, the outspoken opposition voice, who doesn't mince words. In a moment that would dominate headlines and WhatsApp groups across Zambia, he unleashes a verbal assault, calling this foreign assessment a national disgrace. But here's where the story gets complicated, where the layers begin to peel back like an onion, revealing uncomfortable truths. Who gave this foreign newspaper the authority to judge Zambia's leader? Why now? What prompted this rating? And more crucially, is Chishimba defending national sovereignty, or is this political theater at its finest? When a foreign entity passes judgment on an African leader, are they overstepping colonial boundaries that should have been erased decades ago? Or are they providing the kind of accountability that citizens themselves struggle to demand? And when opposition figures rush to defend the very president they typically criticize, what game is really being played? What are the stakes? What are we not being told? Is this about patriotism or politics? About national pride or personal positioning? And in a country still finding its democratic footing, who really benefits when foreign newspapers become the referees of domestic governance? Factual foundation. The revelation came to light in late December 2024, just as Zambians were preparing for the holiday season and reflecting on another year under President Hichilema's New Dawn administration. The controversy centers on a rating published by an international newspaper. Reports suggest it was a European publication with a history of covering African politics that assessed President Hakainde Hichilema's performance since taking office in August 2021. The specific details of the rating remain somewhat contested, with various sources providing different accounts of exactly what was said and how harshly the president was judged. What is clear is this: the rating was unfavorable. Some sources indicate it focused on economic performance, particularly the handling of Zambia's debt crisis, the kwacha's depreciation, and the rising cost of living. Others suggested addressed democratic backsliding concerns, media freedom issues, and the treatment of political opposition. The story gained traction on December 27 and 28, when screenshots of the article began circulating on Zambian social media platforms. Twitter, Facebook, and WhatsApp groups erupted with commentary. Government supporters dismissed it as foreign interference and neo-colonial arrogance. Critics of the administration quietly shared it as validation of their concerns. Then, on December 28, Savior Chishimba, a prominent figure in Zambian opposition politics and known for his passionate, often controversial statements, issued his response. Through a video statement that quickly went viral, Chishimba condemned the foreign newspaper's rating as an insult to Zambian sovereignty and called it a national disgrace that any external entity would presume to judge an African leader in such terms. The timing is significant. President Hichilema has faced mounting pressure domestically. The cost of mayalai meal, Zambia's staple food, has skyrocketed. Fuel prices continue to climb. Load shedding has crippled businesses and frustrated citizens. And yet, international financial institutions and Western governments have largely praised Hichilema's administration for its economic reforms and transparency efforts. This disconnect between international approval and domestic frustration forms the backdrop of the current controversy. And Chishimba's response, paradoxically defending a president he typically opposes, adds another layer of complexity to an already intricate political landscape. Direct evidence. In his video statement, which has now been viewed hundreds of thousands of times across various platforms, Savior Chishimba was characteristically unrestrained. I want to address this absolutely ridiculous situation we find ourselves in, Chishimba began, his frustration evident. A foreign newspaper, a European newspaper, sitting thousands of miles away from Zambia, has the audacity, the sheer audacity, to rate our president and call his performance inadequate. And I'm saying this today, clearly and without apology, this is a national disgrace. He continued, his voice rising, who are they? Who gave them this authority? Since when did we, as Zambians, as Africans, decide that our leaders must be graded like schoolchildren by foreign publications that know nothing, absolutely nothing, about our context, our struggles, our history? Chishimba paused, as if collecting his thoughts, before pressing on. Now, let me be very clear here. Very clear. I am not saying President Hichilema has done a perfect job. I'm not saying there aren't legitimate criticisms to be made. In fact, I've made many of those criticisms myself. But there's a world of difference between Zambians holding their leader accountable and foreigners, who don't live here, who don't suffer here, who don't understand our reality, passing judgment as if they're some kind of supreme authority. When asked by a journalist later that day whether he was abandoning his opposition stance, Chishimba responded, "This isn't about supporting HH. This is about supporting Zambia. This is about rejecting neo-colonial attitudes that suggest Africans can't assess their own leaders without European approval or disapproval." The journalist pressed, "But Mr. Chishimba, don't international assessments provide valuable accountability?" Accountability? Chishimba replied, his tone sharp. Accountability comes from citizens, from voters, from our own democratic institutions. Not from newspapers in London or Paris or wherever this one is based. When they write these things, they're not being helpful. They're being patronizing. They're perpetuating the idea that Africa needs external validation or external criticism to function properly. And I reject that. Completely. Social media responses poured in immediately. One Twitter user wrote, "Never thought I'd see the day Savior Chishimba defends HH. What timeline are we living in?" Another commented, "He's right though. We can criticize our own leaders without foreign newspapers getting involved. This is neo-colonialism in a different form." But not everyone was convinced. Opposition activist Memory Campbell posted, "This is political theater." Chishimba sees an opportunity to appear patriotic while avoiding addressing the real issues that foreign newspaper raised. Classic misdirection. Meanwhile, government spokesperson Cornelius Mwikwa released a brief statement, "We appreciate all those who understand that Zambia's progress should be assessed by Zambians first and foremost. However, we remain open to constructive engagement with all stakeholders, both domestic and international." Deeper analysis. This controversy touches on several sensitive nerves in Zambian and broader African political discourse. First, there's the question of sovereignty versus accountability. In an increasingly interconnected world, where global press freedom and international journalism play crucial roles in exposing corruption and authoritarianism, where do we draw the line between legitimate scrutiny and neo-colonial interference? Dr. Muzanda Kabwe, a political scientist at the University of Zambia, offers this perspective. What we're seeing is a tension that has existed since independence. African nations want to be treated as equals on the world stage, but they also want the autonomy to develop their own systems of accountability without external pressure. The challenge is that international attention can be both helpful and harmful. Helpful when it exposes genuine abuses, harmful when it applies inappropriate standards or perpetuates stereotypes. The United Party for National Development, UPND, President Hichilema's party, has largely remained quiet on the specific rating, though party officials have shared Chishimba's comments approvingly on social media, a remarkable development given that Chishimba has been one of the administration's harshest critics. opposition parties find themselves in an awkward position. The Patriotic Front, which ruled Zambia for a decade before losing power in 2021, would typically seize any opportunity to criticize Hichilema. But condemning Chishimba's defense would mean appearing to side with foreign criticism of a Zambian leader, which could backfire politically. Legal experts note that there are no grounds for any action against the foreign publication. Press freedom protections extend to international media, and Zambia has no jurisdiction over foreign newspapers. This reality itself frustrates many Zambians who feel powerless in the face of external narratives. The ethical questions run deep. Should international media apply the same standards to all countries, or should context matter? When a newspaper in a wealthy, stable democracy critiques a leader in a developing nation facing structural challenges, is that fair comparison? And yet, doesn't holding different standards for African leaders suggest a form of prejudice? The soft bigotry of low expectations? Economic analysts point out that Zambia's situation is genuinely difficult. The country inherited massive debt, faces climate-related challenges affecting agriculture and hydroelectric power, and must navigate a complex global economic environment. President Hichilema's reforms have won praise from the IMF and World Bank, but these same reforms often involve painful short-term adjustments that hurt ordinary citizens. The disconnect between international approval and domestic frustration is real, explains economist Lubinda Habazoka. Institutions like the IMF care about debt sustainability and fiscal discipline. Ordinary Zambians care about whether they can afford Mayalai meal and whether the electricity works. Both perspectives are valid, but they often conflict. There's also a historical dimension that cannot be ignored. Colonial powers historically exercised control over African nations partly through controlling narratives, deciding who was a good leader and who wasn't, often based on how compliant those leaders were with Western interests rather than how well they served their people. This historical trauma makes many Africans particularly sensitive to foreign judgments, even when those judgments might have merit. But the counter-argument is equally compelling. African citizens deserve the same level of press scrutiny and accountability as citizens anywhere else. To say that African leaders should be exempt from international media coverage is to infantilize the continent and its people. Thank you so much for watching today's edition of InspirAfrica Official. This story raises fundamental questions about sovereignty, accountability, and the role of international media in African affairs. Questions that don't have simple answers but demand our continued attention and thoughtful discussion. I want to hear from you in the comments below. Do you agree with Savior Chishimba that this foreign raiding represents neo-colonial interference? Or do you believe international media has a legitimate role in assessing African leaders? Should Zambians be the sole judges of their president's performance, or does the interconnected nature of our modern world mean leaders must answer to both domestic and international scrutiny? Share your thoughts respectfully. These are complex issues, and there's room for multiple perspectives. We'll be back tomorrow with more stories that matter to Africa and Africans. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and never stop asking questions. I'm Nakash, and this has been InspirAfrica Official. Take care, and see you tomorrow.